No music today?
There is music, but the music's not working. Well. Hello, everyone. I'm just going to stick the music on that everyone hates. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Bugwatch. We're 15 seconds in, and we're loving life. I am your boy Swissley, aka Davey, aka whatever you want. And yeah, we're here today, the day after the night before of the ITT, the largest teams tournament in the UK. I wasn't there because team tournaments are yucky, gross, don't touch you. But our friend, compatriot, and Undertaker, JP, was there, and he had a wonderful time. JP, how are you doing?
I'm doing very well. As you said, I had a very fun and excellent weekend. And yeah, it's that's pretty much taken up my entire life for the last 2 weeks since the last show, is getting ready for that and putting everything in place. So no, it was really good and really rewarding.
Absolutely. No, it looks amazing. We're going to go through that in a minute, yeah, it should be cool, guys. So we're going to talk mostly about JP's experience at the ITT, but I have got some other lists to quickly peruse. One especially, which is really spicy, very different to what we've seen in the past, and yeah, really keen to show you that one. But hey, going through lists, who does that? Everyone nowadays. Anyway. Let's go. Sorry, not bitter. Let's go to the show. We'll turn down the music. Yeah, cool. So before we just get started, quick word from the team. If you are in the UK and you like the content that the Plus pervades out, that we create for you, we'll be hosting our very own grand tournament, our very own GT. It's a 60-player GT. It's on the 15th and 16th of March of next year. Dangerously close to my wife's birthday, but she's been kindly allowed me to have that weekend off. It's going to be at Prestige Wargaming in Barnsley. Barnsley? Don't you all live down south? Yes, we do. But it's in Barnsley. We're going to have a great time up north. I used to live near there. I'm a big fan. We are going to be using WTC terrain, so a little bit of a change from the UK TC scene. Not that it's bad, it's just nice to have a change every so often. So that'll be a nice little break. We're going to be live streamed by Glasshammer Gaming with David, and his setup is fantastic. It gets better event after event. It was on last weekend as well, which was really great. We're going to have a big focus on sportsmanship and positive play, because that's who we are. If we're not good, we are sporting. That is at least what we try and do. Although we are quite good now, so watch out. And you get a really quality welcome bag. This is one of my big things. I went to a GT in Barcelona, which I keep mentioning over and over again. But one of the things the guys over there did was give us this absolutely outstanding goodie bag with a tape measure that I still use now. So we're going to be doing that for the guys who come to the event. So please do come. There are only checks for 17 tickets left, so go and get them now, because they are going. They're gone. I unfortunately won't be playing. I'll be either commentating and or running things. So yeah, should be great. I'm going to look forward to it. Anyway, let's get on with the actual show, guys. This is a gravestone I'd like to show you. If you've only started playing Tyranids in 10th edition, you won't have seen this unit. You might not have seen it if you started in the middle of 9th after this codex was released. But this, ladies and gentlemen, is a Hive Guard. Yes, I think it's pronounced Hive Guard because I've never seen one on the table because I only started Tyranids after the book came out in 9th. So this thing lived apparently from 2010 till 2022. No one's ever seen one since then. Oh wait, JP took 6 to the ITT of this god-awful unit. There was a little bit of chat in our Discord about, is this any good? Is this unit viable? I literally posted a meme saying, like, I am leaving this chat if you continue to talk about these guys being good. This is an awful unit. Please step away from this unit. GP took 6 to the ITT and did okay with it. Anyway, we'll get onto that in a sec. So what is the ITT? For those of you who are not in the UK or less competitive or both, if you're American. I'm joking. The ITT is the International Teams Tournament. It takes place in the UK. It's international. I think because we have some people from other countries come. I don't know what else makes it international, but it's you can call it whatever you like, right?
Probably it.
We so there was it's how I don't know how many. Do you know how many teams there were in total,
I
JP?
think it was 69.
69.
Yeah, it was
Nice.
somewhere. It was mid to high 60s. Let me have a look.
Mid to high 60s. And we made up three of those teams, which I'm quite impressed by, quite happy. I think Black Crow had about four teams or something,
They have a
five.
lot of teams.
They are a big team. So we had three teams there. We had Alfarius, Amigon, and Legion, so three different teams. Yeah, like we did pretty well. The Alfarius team, we'll only mention them once and then we'll just forget about them, JP, but we have to mention them.
That's fine.
Alfarius managed to go unbeaten.
Yes.
And get fourth place at the total event. So very well done to them. That's probably our best performance at any ITT. So really well done to them.
Yeah, no, it was really, really, really good for them. So if they'd have won that final round, so they drew the final round. If they'd have won, they'd have been in the final, which is obviously a huge achievement for that team. I mean, Ed went and bodied people all weekend. I think he put 4 20-0s on the board and like a 17. Like honestly, his Eldari list was absolutely shoving people out the game. It was like taking names. It was just mental. Like I'd go and catch up with him after each round. Like, how are you doing? And Ed's like, yeah, just 20-0'd. It's all good.
Mate, he's so funny at events, right? So Ed, if you don't know, Ed is this chap here with the tiara on. So Ed, when you go to events, you'll be playing and you'll be like halfway through the round, and Ed will just come over and go, "Hi, how are you doing?" I'm like, "Oh, nice. How are you? How are you doing? Are you going to the toilet or something?" Like, no, I've just bodied my opponent. You're like, "Oh, okay, cool, yeah, nice." And he just manages to just destroy people within like half the allotted time. I just don't understand how he does it, but he's a very talented young bear.
Yes.
So that is the ITT. This is JP's army that he took. I thought I'd take pictures there. Hey, Craig, how you doing? Craig was at the Craig Bedford in chat was at the ITT on our good pal Greg Chamberlain's team.
Yes.
Who we'll talk about in a bit as well because he did quite well. But these are pictures of what the army JP took. You might notice that there's a few different flavors of Tyranid.
Yeah, I had to borrow a lot of the models because my collection does not extend far enough to the nonsense that I wanted to play. Admittedly, I did already own the Hive Guard, so I was borrowing stuff that's actually good because I didn't know if anyone would have 6 painted Hive Guard anywhere.
You're like first name on the sheet, first thing in the list, 6 Hive Guard. Right, now I need to borrow the rest.
Yes. No, to be fair, Craig's right. It was world class borrow hammer.
Yeah.
I ended up borrowing from you, Davey. I ended up borrowing from Lewis, and that was the 2 people I needed stuff from. I got a carpet of gaunts from you, and I got some monsters from Lewis, and I provided the rest myself. So it looked pretty stunning on the table, and weirdly, actually, like borrowing so many models meant that it was super easy to work out which unit was which, especially when you're trying to play 70 termagants. It's certainly easier to find when they're all different.
Absolutely, yeah, that's fair. So yeah, very cool. So you can see here some of the deployments that JP was running out there. Cool. Let's go to the next one. All right, so this is JP's list, guys. Do you want to take us through it, JP?
Yeah. So I basically based it off of Sam Pope's current lists. He's been doing some tournaments in America where he's basically gone away from your conventional invasion fleet lists where it's sort of heavy infantry with a bit of scoring chaff. And he's basically trying to play much more of a passive scoring game and denial game. So you go away from there's no Maliceptors, you still have the Exocrine Rupture Effects combination, but you don't have like a Hive Tyrant, you don't have like Gene Stealers, you don't have Maliceptors, you don't have Trigons, and instead you try to focus on this really difficult to remove, as much as you can say it's really weird, difficult to remove package of a base of 60 Termagants in 3x20. And what it allows you to do is it allows you to play this game of like, I'm going to score 90 points every single game. What can your opponent's army do when you've sort of got a lot of interaction pieces? It's honestly, I put it on the table for this tournament the first time I played with it. I had no practice games. Honestly, the list is incredible. Obviously, you've played it as well, Davey, and you gave me a lot of tips. I watched the game that Sam played against TG Lanigan at the Battle for Salvation. It's just completely different to any style of Tyranid army I've played, because you've got lots of stuff, and normally that means you've got good combat, but there's no combat.
Zero combat.
And bizarrely, like my wife Shannon came along on the second day, and she watched the final. She watched quite intently the final game versus Eldari, which we'll get onto. And she walked out going, I've never actually seen Termagants do anything. And all of a sudden, like, these Termagants are just wiping out units of Eldari, taking half the wounds off a tank in an activation. It's just bonkers. So the basis of the list is it revolves around a Tervagon with adaptive biology. It's a 200-point model that over the weekend did the square root of not a lot. Never died, killed like 3 Terminators and some chaff, and didn't do anything.
That's
But
interesting.
it's like it never needed to, because what it does is it plays really well in combination with some of the other stuff. But basically, it just means your opponent looks at your Termagant unit and goes, I can only see 2 models. I'm going to activate once with something, kill 6 of them, for example. You're just going to regrow them all back out of the Tervagon with no stratagems, no CP investiture. And the way that UKTC now plays, especially when you've got table quarters and diagonal deployment, and to an extent in Dawn of War, you've got this nice L shape of 2 different ruins, where you can, in theory, with the fire lanes, even on the light boards of the ITT, you can deploy a Tervagon, Venom Throats, and 60 Termagants, and no one can see them. And then what it allows you to do, because the center objective is so close to that ruin, you can put 1 Termagant or 2 Termagants on the center objective, roll a 1, they'll still get back behind the wall. And I've been talking with a couple of other people, and I had a catch up with Haristo over the weekend. And realistically, there's not that many combat armies right now. Guard don't fight you. Sisters don't fight you. GSC can, but GSC aberrants don't really want to run into 60 Spine Fist Gaunts with lethals and sustained.
Yeah.
You have to be really careful with it. But also a lot of the units can't kill 20 turn against the Gono pain. So
Mike's gone.
Is it coming back?
There you go, back again.
So it kind of plays this game of like, I'm going to reveal a minimal amount of stuff. It's still like 6 OC on a center objective, so you out OC a basic unit. You have a reactive move. But say, for example, they come around the corner with a tank, they'll kill, I don't know, half a dozen Gaunts, and then give you more movement. And it's like, there were so many matchups throughout the weekend where people would just look at the Termagants and go, no, that's your objective. I literally can't do anything because... So it's like, okay, fine. So although it didn't do a lot, it's its presence on the board that's just really powerful in the way that Army wants to play.
If I can add to that, though, I think you can be quite bullish with a Tervagon. Maybe perhaps I'm being too bullish, but it depends on what your opponent's chucking at you, right? Because this thing doesn't die real easy. Don't get me wrong. Does it kill anything? It struggles with that as well. But, I mean, into Marines, it does okay. You know?
Yeah, I didn't want to reveal it to Brian's list because he had the Eradicator brick.
Yeah, no, of course. Yeah, that makes sense.
It was weird. So every single one of my opponents had something that could kill it.
Fair.
So, for example, you had the Eradicator brick in the Gladius list. You had double Rupture Effects, double Maliceptor, triple Epicocrin in the Crusher list. You had Imperial Knights, which just have a pile of weapons. To be fair, Imperial Knights was probably the one that would have not done the damage to it.
Interesting.
Death Guard, but then just because it's like they have battle cannons which wound it on 5s and they're AP1, the Gatling cannon wounds it on 5s, not a lot of AP. You can basically have a 2-up save and then you've got Feel No Pain.
Mm-hmm.
If they get into combat, then it really hurts.
Yeah.
Death Guard just have so many. They had 18 Death Shrouds, so they do just eat through it eventually. And you don't want to give them it for free. And then Eldari was playing Triple Fire Prism, which can one-shot it because it's so much damage 6.
Mm-hmm.
So it was kind of like a lot of the matchups were like, it will come out on turn 5 and sit on the home objective and do something. And it's like, cool. It did a lot of stuff. So then the core of the army is, for my version, was 10 Hormagaunts, 3x20 Termagants with Spine, Fists, and Stranglewebs, and 10 Termagants. I had to play with Devourers because I couldn't get together the 10 extra Spine Fists, and these also had a Strangleweb as well. It's an 18-inch flamer with Dev Wounds. It's perfect for the unit.
Is it 18-inch?
Yes. The flamer itself is 18 inches. I actually had to double check, and it's not 12 inches. It's an 18-inch flamer.
Oh, mate, I've just learned that. Jeez. Also, what a good boy you are, right? Oh, no, I need to have WYSIWYG. Just chuck the models out there. No one's going to complain.
To be fair, my strangle web in that Devourer unit was a flesh borer, but it's a different weapon that's not in the rest of the army. So what are you going to do?
Yeah, fair.
And then obviously you had the support pieces. So I had a Biovore, I had 2 normal lictors and a neuro lictor. I had the 3 venom throats, which again plays with it's the Tervigon venom throat package that keeps the Termagants alive because they're -1 to hit and cover, which means that if someone just shoots bolters at you, they kind of bounce off. You normally bolters tear through Termagants. This army, they kind of bounce with no AP. You have a 4-up save. And then I had a monster package of triple exocrine and double rupture effects. And then I had the Tector resistance of the 6 Hive Guard, as Davey has put them in there quite kindly. He does not believe in Hive Guard Dream. But yeah, it was 6 Hive Guard to round off the list. It's probably one of the weirdest lists I've ever played in my life, whilst also being one of the funnest lists, because it plays in such an incredibly different way to your conventional Tyranid army. Like normally with Maliceptors, you can push them in the open and you have a very strong chance that there's just nothing going to happen to them. In this army, if you push 20 Termagants into the center, even with all the buffs, they will probably still die just because it's the amount of focus fire on a toughness 3 unit. But it allows you to play this incredible game of reveal minimal assets, but also present those minimal assets as, if you do kill these, you're not going to kill many, and then I'm going to regenerate more and get more on the objective. There were multiple times this weekend where my opponent would kill half a unit of Termagants. My command phase, I would activate the Tervigon, would regenerate D3+3 gaunts, which have to be set up within 2 inches of the existing unit. So that's 3 inches. I would then pop this. That would then resolve that, and then I'd pop the stratagem. So as the active player, you can stack it how you want. So you activate that, it resolves, and then you activate the stratagem, which gives you another D3+3. They also have to be set up within 2 inches of the existing unit, except that existing unit is now 3 inches further up the table.
Oh, I don't know if that's right, man.
I believe it is because the unit has to be deployed within coherency of the existing unit.
Let me see.
If you can work it out. It never really came up because I was always close enough to an objective, but there is a theory that I believe it works that way. But I'll let you look it up while we're talking.
Maybe the chat can tell us. We're too busy presenting a show, right? God, busy people, JP. But no, I mean, it very rarely matters on UKTC because you're right. You're just right next to the objective anyway.
Yeah, and even if it didn't put you on, it would put you like 3 inches close to an objective, and then you'd be able to walk on. The 10-man term. So normally the Sam Pope list is 4x20, but I decided that I wanted the extra lone op in the army because UKTC is substantially more open. Yeah, it's 2 separate activations, so it should work the way I want it to.
God damn, I'm going to win this GT at the weekend. I've just been playing with 12-inch flamers over here and minimal respawning.
Yeah. So I double check with the TO, but the way I read it, because it, as Craig says, it's 2 separate activations. Each activation checks on the unit that's currently existing.
Yeah, I'll have a quick look.
So the purpose of the list is you set up a castle in your deployment zone with the Termagants around the Tervigon and the Venom Throats. You then sit the Hive Guard and the Biovore in your home deployment zone, and then you just hide the Exocrines and the Rupture Effects around the board. So, do you want me to go over the reasons for Hive Guard now, or?
Yeah, absolutely. I think go off with the Hive Guard. Yeah, absolutely. I was thinking, do we talk about why no Hive Tyrant first? But let's go with Hive Guard first.
Well, we can do the no Hive Tyrant. So when you put this list together normally, you basically have 200 so the original Sam Pope list, if you put it in his variant is Winged Hive Tyrant, Tervigon, 10 Hormagaunts, 4x20 Termagants, and then the rest of it minus Neurolictor minus the Hive Guard. The list comes out at 1,970 points. So you have 30 points left over, which in Tyranids is really hard to use. So I made the decision that I wanted an additional loan up for UKTC, so drop 10 Termagants, put in a Neurolictor for the nice flat 90. The Hive Guard are exactly the same points as the Winged Hive Tyrant. So I didn't take a Winged Hive Tyrant because going back to the discussion with the loan op, UKTC is generically incredibly open. A lot of the maps, especially with the way they've changed some of the Crucible of Battle L's, you actually can't hide the Hive Tyrant anymore particularly easily. And the place you want it sometimes takes up too much space, very difficult to hide versus GW or WTC terrain. So I decided to drop that, and I replaced that with the synapse of the Neurolictor, and I put 6 Hive Guard in. Now, would I play 6 Hive Guard in singles? Most likely not. They were specifically in as a tech piece to play into the significant number of 6-inch deep strikes. It basically meant that if I got thrown under the guard bus, I'd always be able to hold my home objective. Hive Guard are really good against the Aquilons, and they're pretty damn good against Tempesta Scions as well. Not just because they are T7 and 4 wounds and 3-up saving cover, and you can give them a 5-up feel no pain, which makes them incredibly tanky. But also they have while they're on an objective, which they generally are, they have a 4+ Overwatch to hit. So when you're playing against guard and you have sustained 1, you get 24 shots at strength 5, hitting on a 4 with sustained 6s, AP 1. And you can, in theory, you can kill most of a Tempesta Scion squad that comes down, even if it's 15 models. They'll probably only have like 5 models left. And suddenly that does no damage to your Hive Guard to significant numbers. So all these threats that want to drop in your backfield and go loads of damage, suddenly can't do that because either they don't have the output like Aquilons, who just bounce off of Hive Guard, to Tempestas, which can normally die, to Flamer suits in Ret Cadra, which suddenly do no damage. They have to commit their Sunforge units, which want to be going after Rupture Fexes and Exocrines, and you're just this diversity of threats where suddenly your home objective just is under no threat.
It's a castle, isn't it? Yeah.
Exactly. And also late game, it falls into a similar category of the Tervigon. They're T7 4 wounds apiece. Like they generally, like I ran against the Death Guard opponent, I ended up bringing them out at the end and just threw them into Death Shrouds. Because it's like 2 damage, great, I've got a 5-up feel no pain, like you killed 2 models. And it was just, we just ended up playing this game where it's like, I'm going to throw these into you, you fall back if you want to do anything, otherwise we're just going to meat grinder ourselves, and these are really good in a meat grinder. And it was just kind of that scaling effect of like, they were just really, really useful. And they weren't the worst army unit in the game. But I think the biggest thing for me that I found come the end of the tournament, it allowed me an out to people playing little chaff units in the center of the board who want to deny you big area denials. Your opponent can't stage like small combat units. I stopped three sabotage attempts with the Hive Guard in the weekend because my opponent, or I forced my opponent to like use like for example, in the Death Guard game, he put 10 cultists in to sabotage a ruin, and they all died. The Hive Guard activated and killed all 10 cultists. The sabotage doesn't go off anymore, denies them 3 secondary points. The next turn, they still have it. They are then doing it with 6 Death Shroud. So you take like 2 turns off of a key unit doing anything.
I mean, that's game winning in itself, isn't it? Right? Is when they've lost, when the card's been stuck to them. Yeah, it's rough.
Exactly. And through all of these lists, like they always found stuff to do. And in the matchups where you take lethal hits, like sure, it's AP 1, they're going to be on their save, but they'll do like 24 shots is, it's like 4 auto wounds. And they're still strength 5, so they wound a lot of tanks on 5s. You can do like 8 to 10 wounds with them. So you say, for example, you get 4 auto wounds, you've done the 4, you've done 8 wounds. A 3-up armor save, they're failing 2 or 3 of those saves. So it's 2 or 3 wounds that stick on tanks. And that can make the difference between a tank dying to a Rupture Fex or it not dying to a Rupture Fex.
Yeah, absolutely.
The Rupture, so for example, if it's got say you've got a 12 wound tank, the Rupture Fex does on average 9 wounds.
Mm-hmm.
Does Hive Guard do 3? Oh, the tank's dead. So it was just this sort of scaling up. And as you'll see from the matchups, like all of them apart from the Imperial Knights army had something to kill with the Hive Guard, and it just meant that all my opponent's chaff assets suddenly didn't survive very long, whereas again, where normally with Tyrannid, you find like your opponent can always do things with their chaff if they can hide out of line of sight, whereas in this arm, it's like, no, I'm really sorry, your cultists are all dead, your Hormagaunts are all dead, I'll just activate and pick them all up. So the Hive Guard did end up being a really nice tech piece. Just meant that your opponent had to think about different things when they were setting up for the game.
Absolutely, and the range being 24 inches is something I've always looked at as a bit of a...
You mean 36?
Is it 36?
Yeah.
Oh, mate, I need to go back to Tyrannid school. Nice. All right, yeah, because I think you might be right. It might be 36. But yeah, so you've had some really interesting matchups here.
It's 24 on the shot cannon. It's 36 on the Impaler cannon.
That's what it is. So you obviously ran the gauntlet here, and
oh yes,
opening day 1 with your list here, and you've not played this list ever before. You've just had a bunch of models thrown at you by different individuals, and you stand there with these big two handfuls of gaunts. You put them on the table, and Brian Sipe is opposite you. How are you feeling going into this game?
Obviously I was on 6++ Omegon, so it was myself, Scrivo, Rob, Lee, and Lewis were all on the team. So we had a really nice combination of armies. So I was obviously on Tyranids. We had Lewis on Tau. I know he's a Tyranid player, but we kind of made the decision that I only have Tyranids, so I would be the Tyranid player. Lewis would pick up Tau. It was he played really well, and I think he was really worried about how it went, but he played super well with his Storm
They had a Storm Surge.
And to be fair, it was a big threat. He absolutely clapped some poor Chaos Knight player that played against him. It's what we needed him to do, and he perfectly did it. We had Leon Chaos Space Renegade Parking Lot Chaos Space Marines. Had a really good weekend. A couple of unfortunate matchups where his stuff just bounced off of Votan at the end. We had Rob on his famed Drukhari Sky Splinter, and then we had Scrivo on full push Dark Angel Stormlands. So round one, unfortunately, on Wednesday, we knew that as Omegon, we were playing into Team Ignite, probably the best team in the room and the actual eventual winners. They ended up absolutely clapping Vanguard Tactics in the final. Vanguard Tactics in the final lost more heavily than we did in round one. So I'll take that as a win as well.
You're better than Vanguard.
Clearly better than Vanguard Tactics. We got more points off of Ignite. So we kind of knew what we wanted when we went in. We had a mess around with pairings, had a chat with some of the other people about what we'd end up doing. We were hoping that we would get Guard into our David Gaylard on Guard into our Tau, which ended what was happening. The rest of them didn't seem too bad. Scrivo ended up into Yockel's Dread Knight spam. Rob ended up running under the Sisters bus and picked up like 4 to 6 points. So it was like, I would count that as a win. Take 4 to 6 points off Vic's triple exorcist list with
when you're Drukhari, yeah, absolutely. That's really good.
And then Lewis ran, I think he got 6 points off of Gaylard. And then unfortunately, Lee had to run into the prison admit list, which is obviously an incredible list. Like Myson's also an incredible player. So when we were pairing it up, I thought I would either end up running under the Sisters bus or under the or into Grey Knights, into Yockel. But when the pairings were paired out, I ended up playing into Brian Sipe's Ultramarine Gladius Force. Really cool list, making the most of the triple ballistas. The points dropped to the ballistas, going with triple ballistas, repulsor executioner, Robo Gulliman, and then a couple of other things. He had the traditional Eradicator squad with Apothecary Biologus and the Fire Discipline. So basically, it one-shots monsters no matter what they are. And that unit, Overwatch, is like an absolute monster as well because it's lethal hits. So I ended up playing into that, having no idea what to do. We were playing on Dawn of War deployment. I think I absolutely rocked Brian in the first 2 turns. So by the end of the first 2 turns, I went first, which I think was a massive benefit to me. I also think that Brian didn't know the matchup either. He'd only just started playing Ultramarines Gladius, and also this is a very weird version of Tyranids, which doesn't quite play the way you think it will do. So turn 1, my 2 rupture.
Actually, just on that, John, let's just quickly talk about that. Well, how do you think people think you're going to approach the game here? Because I have thoughts.
So I think people are assuming you're just going to chuck the gaunts across the board and just try and play a primary denial game.
Absolutely.
Rather than you just sort of sitting in a castle, offering some resources and then pulling back and playing a technical game where your opponent, if they commit anything, kind of runs into Termagants that can't kill, or they get the objective stolen off them out of nowhere, and all those little things. And to be fair, I didn't really steal too much. I did get 1 turn where I stole some extra points off of Brian, but it wasn't anything that he could really do anything about. 5 Assault Intercessors doesn't really do as much into Termagants as you think it might do, just because of the 5 at Feel No Pain.
Yeah.
But I think most people expect it to be, it plays in a very different way. And I think Brian definitely came up to me, and I think I really enjoyed the game. Brian is a lovely opponent, an absolute legend to play against. And I think he thinks that I think he'll look back and go, probably could have played the game slightly differently. Whether it helps him to win or not, I think the matchup's actually slightly favoured to this Tyranid list because you've just got so many more resources and assets. And also the Rupture Fexes do absolutely tap tanks. So because of Dawn of War deployment, there's a ruin on my right hand deployment, which looks directly into my opponent's deployment zone. And I went first. My 2 Rupture Fexes walked around the corner. One blew up a ballistus in one activation, and the other one put the other ballistus down to 1 wound. which was just like incredible. And then on the way back, his stuff just bounced off the rupture effects. The Repulsor Executioner did 1 wound, which got blanked immediately, and the Ballistus did 3 or 4 wounds to one of them in total. And then on the way back, the 2 rupture effects picked up the Repulsor Executioner, which exploded, killing the wounded Ballistus, and the other one blew up the other Repulsor with some help from the Hive Guard. And at that point, you're so many tanks down that you can't easily deal with all the Termagants anymore. So you're having to use Eradicators to shoot Termagants and then charge them and still not take the objective off of them. So I ended up terraforming 2 of the 3 objectives, which allowed me to get obviously a bigger score. I don't think Brian actually ever terraformed any of them. So obviously he's losing points every turn that he isn't able to terraform. Mm-hmm. I definitely left some points on the table with primary, but not a lot. And I felt that I played the game almost as well as I could. And I think it just came out really well. Like my rupture effects were absolutely on point. And eventually when they did get into me, like Rabute and the Tervagon had a bit of a wet noodle fight in the middle of the board in my deployment zone.
Mike's gone.
I'm sure it'll come back.
There you go.
Fortunately, I was very lucky. Rabute fell over and didn't get back up.
Nice.
Lucky. And it's on a 3+, so it's not completely reliable, but I think at this point there was just too many resources gone. This was when the Hive Guard are really good. They ran out and they engaged the Melter Squad in combat. So when the Melter Squad fell back, they then have to shoot the Hive Guard. They kill only a few of them. An Exocrine died at the same time, and then I just go back in and I'm just holding these things in combat. They do no damage to Hive Guard in combat, and it's all sort of those little things. And it was just a bit of a build-up of points. At the end of the day, Brian actually scored really well to get 67. I think he thought it was going to be worse. But Brian's like world-class, so
he's awesome.
I expected nothing else than to have a good game, and a 13-7 win is amazing. And I was over the moon with how I played the game and how the results were.
Yeah, there is a temptation just to go home at that point, right? Because how do you go past doing that? That's amazing. Brian's an incredible player.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I always want to play against those players, and I don't always get the opportunity to, because you learn so much from those games and how they play from behind, and how they have that team mindset to like, right, how many points can I actually get, etc., etc. Absolute gent. We played one of the most enjoyable games of Warhammer I've played in my time playing Warhammer. It was definitely one to remember, and he's an absolute gent to play against.
Well, thanks for teaching him how to defeat the list, because apparently he's at the same GT as me this weekend. So cheers for that, mate. Well,
let's just say that he went and clowned on everyone else after we played that game. So either he learned how to play his list, or he just remembered how to roll dice. So one of those things. But no, it was awesome. It was fantastic. Obviously, unfortunately, the rest of the team it got ignited, and we ended up losing the first round. But we took 30 points off of them, which was obviously really good.
Yeah, I think so. All right, then round 2, you go into a mirror.
Yeah, so round 2 played into the Wooden Spoon Warriors. We weren't 100% sure on what they wanted, but I can't remember exactly what they put up. But they put up Tyranids. I was fairly sure it was a draw matchup prior to playing this game. I will give you a clue. This ain't a draw.
This is
really bad for Crusher.
Yeah.
And I hadn't realised quite how bad it was for Crusher until we started playing. And this is, to be fair, where the Hive Guard came really good. So we were playing Purge the Foe. So mission 2 is Purge the Foe, and also Smoke and Mirrors. So you can pick a unit up and put it back in deployment zone, and it's diagonal deployment zones. So my opponent, so they chose to take Tyranid Mirror, and yeah, I think it was one of those ones where I think there were a lot of things my opponent could have done differently. I don't think would have affected the eventual score. It just would have got them more points. So the reason that this matchup is really good for me and really bad for Crusher is that it playing that whole strategy of like, I'm going to put some lone ops out, take some pressure from you, and then watch as your single Exocrine that activates into my Termagants kills 4 of them because it's -1 to hit, and then I just regrow onto an objective and put more OC on it. Plus the double rupture effect, plus the Exocrine, I have the pressure to kill his monsters on the way back, but he really struggles to deal with Termagants. But also, if he's too aggressive with his monsters in the center, none of them have that great combat to deal with 20 Termagants, so they just all get tagged in combat, and then they can't shoot me.
Yeah.
And I didn't identify how good this matchup was for me until we just started playing. And I'm starting to get into the game, and I'm like, this feels really good for me because you have no scoring and I have a pile of OC2 bodies that I can just tag you in combat. The Hive Guard were excellent in this matchup. So I went second, and my opponent goes first. Is Purge the Foe. So turn 1, I kill 10 Hormagaunts. I get kill 1. Turn 2, he still can't see. He cannot see any of my army apart from a few Termagants sitting on objectives. It's just a waste of time trying to kill them. My turn 2, I kill 10 more Hormagaunts. Kill 1, kill more. I am 12 primary up on my opponent, completely unanswered.
Oh, why didn't I submit 6 Hive Guard? Oh.
So against Brian, they were okay. They killed scouts and they did some wounds to tanks. But in this matchup, they just killed all this Jaff. And then I would anything that came forward. It was like I probably in that game. I swear to God, I killed a Trigon, a Maleceptor, a Pyrovore, and 20 Hormagaunts, and scored 92 to 56.
Yeah.
I killed about 500 points of Tyranids.
It's all the unending swarm vibes, right? When you used to play that detachment, you couldn't kill anything, but you would still just win games by 20 points at least.
Yeah. And there were things my opponent could have done differently, but it was kind of like, so for example, if you're playing Tyranids and you play into this army and you have a Neurotyrant, just chuck the Neurotyrant in the middle of the board. It does nothing on your home backfield objective, and it has a Flamer. Like it's an actual threat to this style of Tyranid army, and it's not easy to kill because there's 4 of them done. It's a small surface area.
Flamer shot. I mean, you roll a 4 and then it's dead. See you later. But yeah, there's no point in holding back, is there?
No, it does nothing on your home objective. You might as well use it for something because I'm not getting to your home objective unless I'm like super far ahead, and I didn't need to in this matchup. So super really good matchup, was really good to learn. Hive Guard were fantastic in this matchup, and it just meant that I was able to push forward. The rest of the team also did incredibly well this round. They did incredibly well in round 3, but they had a really strong round, so we ended up winning this one.
Very good, very good. So you've had 2 games now. You're going into the 3rd round after 2 really solid wins, and then you come up against the boogeyman of Tyranids, the crazy win rate Imperial Knights, like 67% win rate into Tyranids. Are your teeth chattering? Are your knees knocking? How are you feeling?
So we're playing up against one of the Black Crow teams, and they had a couple of armies which I think in hindsight I again misinterpreted how bad or good the matchup was. So we had they had a triple fire Prism Eldari list. They had this really cool Kroot army with like a Hammerhead, a Storm Surge, and other things, which is a bit rough for me, but that was probably the worst of them. And then they had a couple of other armies, and I ended up being drawn and taking the Imperial Knights matchup because I think there were a few people that were just like, I don't really want to risk this. There's too many things that can go wrong. Mm-hmm. So we obviously this time it was taken hold. It was taken hold and no, it was Table Quarter deployments, Crucible of Battle.
No. I'm saying what the special rule.
Sweep and clear. Crucible of Battle is the diagonal deployment. But we're playing Taken Hold, so obviously it's hold 1, hold 2, hold 3. So my opponent, I ended up again deploying as a castle. My opponent went first and pushed his knights forward. The Las Impulsor from Canis Rex opened up and killed 3 Termagants. He immediately came back and we moved on with our life. My turn 1, my Neurolictor battle shocked his Errant on the center objective. So all of my stuff's +1 to wound. So suddenly my Rupture Cannons wound on 2s. He also cannot rotate Ion Shield, so he's on a 5-up invulnerable save. So my first Exocrine fired up and did 6 damage because it's got my army's lethal hits. The Rupture Effects then fired up and rolled double 6 to hit, doing 2 flat wounds. He failed both invulnerable saves and took 22 damage. So the Errant blew up and died. I then fired up another Exocrine into the Canis Rex. Did 6 wounds again. He was very bad at rolling 6 plus feel no pains. This Canis now has a 4-up invulnerable save. The next Rupture Effects fires up and rolls double 6 to hit again, doing 2 auto wounds. He passes one of these invulnerable saves and then takes 11 wounds from this Rupture Cannon. The Hive Guard then do 3 wounds to it, just because it's only got a 3. For some reason, in big Imperial Knights have a 3-up save, is beyond me. So he's taking, I think he took like 6 or something. Because now the Hive Guard are re-rolling ones. He took like 6 auto wounds and a couple of others and failed a couple of saves and took 3 wounds. The Termagants then plinked to load more off, and Canis Rex ended up dying on turn 1 as well.
Oh, jeez Louise.
So in turn 1, I've killed Canis Rex and the Knight Errant. In his turn, he's got 2 Armigers, 2 Warglaves, and a Crusader left. The Crusader fires up and bounces off the Rupture Effects. No AP. I'm on a 2-up save. It was pretty bad. My turn 2, I blow up the Crusader and charge a Warglaive with 20 Hormagaunts. The Warglaive only has 8 attacks.
Yeah.
And suddenly I'm out of seeing, and it kind of just went downhill from there. Like, my opponent rolled really badly for his Invuns, really badly for their Feel No Pains. And also it's like, just Armiger Warglaves cannot kill enough models. Like, you just run in and go, cool, here's 20 bodies, here's 40 OC, you kill 8 of them, I have 12 left, here's 24 OC, we'll go again next turn and I'll regrow them and I'll still hold the objective. So it just kind of does, like Craig said, it does like activation lock eventually. Once you get rid of the big knights, it properly activation locks. And also, I'm not being funny, big knights really can't touch Rupture Fexes. Like, they are really hard to kill at range without the thermal cannon on the Errant, and I killed that straight away. And
then they do bemoan that our Rupture Fexes, it's a better gun than any of their big guns, pretty much. It's crazy. But no, and just to add to that, like, knights can't deal with the carpet. If you get it, like, especially when Unending Swarm was in a thing, you just used to get into the middle of all the knights and then get charged by them all. And then they kill them, and they kill, like, one of them activates, as you say, then you take all the rest of them out of combat, and that's it. And then they've only activated once, you've still got all your guys left. It's probably our best matchup into, or this kind of style of list that you've been playing and I've been playing, is probably our best chance into knights at the moment.
Yeah, because you can just put more OC on the objective, and bizarrely, knights really struggle to kill gaunts because they do go to hitting on a 4+. So it's really, really, really good. So I ended up winning at 100-37. My opponent got very unlucky. I feel really bad for their dice. Their dice were abhorrent. Apparently, their dice on day 2 were really good, so they got them out of the way on in my game. But as a team, we ended up running away with that one, and everyone scored incredibly highly. I think we scored 92 out of 100 points.
Nice.
Scoring in that, so it was 92-8. So it was pretty impressive.
Very good.
So that brought to the end of day 1. I don't know if you want to go through the questions in chat first.
Yeah, let's do that. That is a good idea. So we have Carl Staver. I don't quite understand this question. Does JP need either a new meme with a diving helmet or B, Hive Guard meme, David gets a tiebreaker? I'm unsure about that. Do you understand that?
Not quite. Carl might have to retype that one and explain it a bit better.
Come back to us on that one, Carl. So we've got Christopher Latta. I bet nobody saw the 70 Termagant meta oncoming.
Nope.
Well, I think Sam Pope did. Then I think I copied Sam Pope and I slided it in front of JP and went, how about this?
Yeah, and I copied Davey and Sam. I do think that, like, that if you looked at every other Tyranid list, no one else was playing this list. No. So that was kind of quite a big thing as well.
I think not to blow too much smoke up your ass, JP. I played the 8-game event at Coventry with a similar list, although I did have 400 points of Carnifexes and all 1-eye with it as well. I think you did amazing to take it and then win with it so clearly and with 0 practice games. So well played.
It's such a good list.
Mr. Monster, if you haven't seen his channel, go and check it out. He is probably the most prolific video maker I've ever seen. He's up there with Auspex Tactics. He's just said here, on the note of the Neurotyrant, did Hive Guard Overwatch beat out the appeal of Zoes or Zoanthropes? What do you reckon to that? We've discussed that a little bit, JP, haven't we?
So I don't have a Neurotyrant. I don't like them. I don't particularly rate them personally. That's not to say that others shouldn't take them. I probably wouldn't take Zoanthropes in this style of invasion list because they give your opponent a target for their, like, mid-range firepower. Like, if you imagine that your opponent has a pile of damage 2 or damage 3 weapons, this army gives them 0 useful targets. They're putting damage 3, damage 2 into Termagants. If you suddenly give them Zoanthropes, which have to move into line of sight to shoot something, you are giving them efficiency to their army. This army does really well at reducing efficiency of those, like, Terminator killing weapons. So, for example, opposing Exocrines, For example, so exposing exocrines,
Forge Fiends, all
forge
of the things in
fiends,
that.
predators,
Yeah.
anything with a heavy bolter, all of those sorts of things. Like this is the sort of list that really punishes it, and just giving them zone thropes does allow them to have some efficiency. Also, because the Hive Guard are running the Impaler cannons, you get the indirect, but also protecting your home field objective. The Overwatch of the Hive Guard from a home objective for me is better than the zone thropes, whilst also like sitting 6 zone thropes on your home objective that doesn't do anything all game, or you 6 Hive Guard, you get to shoot in your shooting phase and also prevent an Overwatch threat. That's my feeling for this list specifically. If I was playing, I would definitely look at playing zone thropes if I was playing like Vanguard Onslaught, for example.
Yeah, I think one of the things we've discussed a lot is any choice that enters into this list has to really reinforce that defensive mindset. Like, for example, you can go and watch my tournament report of Coventry. I had the 2 Carnifexes and the old one eye. A very aggressive unit does not work in this, or from my humble opinion, does not work in this list after 8 games of playing it. Because, like what John says, I'm just giving my opponent something to kill. I don't need to, but I was just putting it out there because I wanted to be aggressive with that unit, and I just give them something to kill. If you're just so defensive, like, there's so many benefits to that with this list.
Yeah, it's I'm normally quite aggressive, and I really had to tone it down. Like, this is an incredibly passive way to play Tyranids. There were many games where I wouldn't shoot with an Execra until turn 3.
Absolutely. Cool, nice. So yeah, let's get on to day 2. You wake up and you've got Death Guard. I played Death Guard the other day, not with this list, with a different meme list that I've been playing on our league. By the way, become a member and join our Discord league. I got ruined by Death Guard with my meme list. They can be really brutal. But how did you feel going into it, and how did the game go?
So this matchup feels like one of the worst matchups for us. So obviously this was 18 Death Shroud Terminators, Mortarion, 2 War Dog Brigands, 20 Poxwalkers and Typhus, and 2 units of Cultists, and that was pretty much it. The reason this matchup's so hard is it's very much a 50-50 flip matchup. If your opponent passes a load of 4-up invulnerable saves, like mine did, you end up with an incredibly close game. If they don't, the Terminators die and suddenly have nothing. Again, the Hive Guard here were fantastic because they were able to pick up 2 units of 10 cultists in 2 turns, which means your opponent's now having to hold objectives with Death Shroud Terminators, Mortarion, and it was Burden of Trust. So suddenly you can't Burden of Trust with 10 cultists, you have to Burden of Trust with 6 Death Shroud, or with a War Dog Brigand, or with Mortarion, and just killing the chaff out made it a little bit easier. But again, the way this game was going, so my opponent went first, played a bit passive for 2 turns, and then full shoved on turn 3. My return fire on turn 3 killed 4 Terminators, and I shot my entire army at them. Yeah. I shot 3 Exocrines and 2 Rupture Fexes into a unit of 6 Death Shroud Terminators and killed 4 Terminators. I couldn't roll to wound, and my opponent couldn't fail saves, to the point where it's like, in theory, that should kill an entire unit and character in one go with that much damage 3. Didn't do anything, and I'm just like, okay, cool. The fact I still pulled out a win on this, I think, is testament to how good this list is. Going second helped. I know you can't Burden of Trust on the final turn, but it was... if I'd have gone... I think if I go first, this actually is even better for me, but going second, I think it's winnable. This is a very winnable game, but Death Shroud are really scary because their Death Shroud unit is able to kill 20 Termagants.
Oh, yeah.
Because they're all flamers, and then they run in with a pile of damage attacks that just completely mow down 20 of them. Mortarion has 15 attacks, so basically kills everything else. And it was just playing the game, and I'm just like, good lord, this game's hard. The Tervigon did a good job. The Tervigon basically held Typhus and 2 Death Shroud and a Sorcerer in combat for like 6 turns. It took 3 wounds in the first activation, and then went, well, I've now got 4 at Feel No Pain. Cool. Let's just have a wet noodle fight. I eventually killed the Sorcerer and the Death Shroud. It just took way too long. Yeah. But in terms of...
She just gums stuff up, right?
Yeah, and if I was playing conventional Invasion Fleet, I think I get absolutely slammed by that army if it gets into your lines. But because you've got so many Termagants, you do have ways of like just stringing stuff out, stealing objectives in the command phase, falling back from combat, seeing if they falling stuff around, playing the game. And it's not too bad a matchup, but it took me way too long to kill the Terminators, and I think that kind of killed the matchup a little bit for me. So when we went into the final round, there was a Death Guard opponent. I'm just not interested in playing this matchup. It's too swingy.
Yeah.
Give me something that I can hammer, and we'll go from there. And it worked out for me in the final round. Didn't so much for the poor person who had to play against the Death Guard. I think Rob got quite unlucky. But yeah, no, Death Guard is probably the one matchup I would want to avoid with this version of Tyranids versus pretty much anything else.
Nice. Craig Bedford in the chat is saying, I like playing against Nids as Death Guard. Yeah, definitely a good matchup for you. We have fewer invulns than a lot of other armies, and they can just mince our AP to pieces, right? So our armor saves to pieces. So nice. All right, so you do that one, and then you go into the 5th round. You're probably knackered after moving 80 gaunts or 80, 90 gaunts?
It's 80 gaunts.
80 gaunts, yeah, for the entire weekend. And you're up against Eldari, a very different matchup to what you've played already.
Yeah, no, so this was kind of one of the new versions of Eldari where it's playing the Autarch Wayleaper, Avatar, the Death Jester. It's got triple Fire Prism, a couple of War Walkers, and then your conventional sort of Ranger unit, Guardian Defender unit for Fate dice, and then there were 15 Warp Spiders. Fortunately, there was no Sweeping Hawks, there was less uppy downy, but it was just really, really cool. It was a really, really cool list. It had been one of the ones that I'd been kind of trying to work out what the matchup was like. And pretty much this matchup falls into the category of can't kill enough gaunts to protect me from just scoring 100 points. We played Scorched Earth. I went second. I have a Carpet of Gaunts that he's never going to kill, so I'm going to burn 2 objectives throughout the game and score 50 on primary, and then score probably 50 on secondary, 40 on secondary, and the 10 painting to give me the 100. And it's pretty much what happened. So I just didn't reveal. I could have, in hindsight, probably played more aggressively with my Rupture Fexes, presented him with more options and stuff, but it just didn't matter. I gave my opponent a few 5s. I gave him a 0. I gave him 3 5s throughout the game and just denied a load of secondaries. And eventually just took over the game, completely ignored the Avatar, killed as much scoring stuff as I could, and just scored secondaries. And I think when we look back on it, my opponent had basically taken Tyranids to help the rest of the team, because they had a Votan player who doesn't really want to play against the Carpet of Gaunt Tyranids army for the same reason.
You got the Terminators.
No, they had no Terminators. They had the Thunderkin, which is all, so that does no damage because it's all anti-vehicle, not anti-monster. So it's like, okay, it's like 3 Sagittars, double land fort, and like other things. Yeah. They had like 15 Berserkers, which again, don't really want to play against Termagants because Spinefists mop them up. Yeah. They had another Death Guard. They had a Death Guard player. They had a Tau player who was playing a Ret Cadra list with 9 suits, which again doesn't really want to play against Carpet of Gaunts because it just doesn't have the output. It had 2 Sky Rays. Cool. Sky Rays get destroyed by Rupture Fexes and don't do damage to Gaunts. Yes. And then they also had a Guard player who was interested in the Nid matchup, but only has 3 Lehman Russes. 20 Aquilons is fine, but it just doesn't quite have the output. So in the end,
better matchups for him.
Sorry,
there'll be better matchups for his army.
Yes, exactly, and I think that's what they did. They were like, okay, we'll take Eldari into Nids, we'll put them on the light table to deny the Tau player from having the light table, because unfortunately we lost the roll off to see who picked first table, and we basically looked at it and went, all right, well, I'll take the Tyranids. He was like, I'll take the Tyranids army. Michael was their player, very good player. Take the Tyranid to see what he scores, and it ended up being a 15-5. Just incredibly oppressive army versus him. It just felt like one of those matchups where it's just incredibly oppressive to play into, because I just got objectives for free because my opponent can't put enough OC on it, and then if he shoots a unit of Gaunts with the Fire Prisms, they then die on the either the Fire Prism. He kills 8 Gaunts, regrow them all, take the objective, score a 10. And because it's hold 1, hold 2, there just wasn't really much benefit to just doing some damage and still giving me an objective. So we just tried to play to everything else to maximize his points and actually did a really good job. It's just the sheer amount of OC that this army has. Eldari just cannot manage that much OC.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Especially not many people taking Guardians nowadays either. So.
No, and also on the way back, the Hive Guard are just picking up 5 units here, there, and everywhere.
Oh mate, like I wish I submitted the Hive Guard now. God, they're absolutely killing the meta. So, so we're looking at these games, and you've described them all really well. Your memory always amazes me of games. I can never remember anything about any of my games, and you remembered all of it. Um, so you kind of alluded to this before, right? And it'd be great to get your opinion on this. Melee matchups. You obviously got a lot of shooting matchups here. Do you think the melee matchups would have been more difficult, or the same, or how would you feel about them?
I mean, this list is a tech choice into the fact there's not really any melee matchups at the moment.
Hmm.
The,
Say that
the
to the three World Eaters players I played last 2 weeks ago.
In singles, there's a variation because you can
Yeah,
run into those, but like there are so few like melee matchups. I think back to all the teams we played against. Like the most melee I'd say we played against was Death Guard, Death Shroud Terminators.
isn't that interesting in teams? Is that such a skew towards shooting?
Like Orcs is like the only one I can think of that's like a real melee pressure army, and
Hmm.
it probably is a rough matchup because they get in your face early on. But if they whiff at any point, like Termagants do a lot of damage to Orcs. Just lethal sustain, twin link weapons, flamer, Hive Guard, or if you don't take the Hive Guard, you've got Exocrines, which just blast their way through things. Rupture effects is pick up the heavier stuff really easily. Yeah, it's I think it will.
Mike's gone.
I, th-
Oh, it's there now. It's there now.
I think at the moment the format is lighter on pure melee.
Hmm.
And the melee that does exist doesn't kill 20 Termagants in one activation.
Yeah.
And I think that's why this list is viable at the moment because there's so many. I think it's also a symptom of the amount of vehicles that are in the meta. There are so many vehicles that you're like, okay, I have to play a dozen anti-tank weapons, and you know what? I love that because I just hide everything and offer you some Termagants, which your las cannon does nothing against.
Oh, I love it. I love it.
And I do think that has been a big part of why this list is viable and succeeds is down to those sorts of things. There are melee matchups that are going to be rush. Orcs are probably the one that's going to be the worst, but again, I can't really think of.
Well, World Eaters is pretty rough. I think the other game I played was Oops All Assault Intercessors Space Wolves with Wolfen, and that was pretty rough as well. Because again, I think you've nailed it on the head. If a unit can pick up an entire squad of 20 in one activation, then it's awesome. And I think that there's certain units that can do that in those armies I played. But no, but also like you've just said, like a lot of the other armies just can't deal with it. So I'm very excited to be taking it this weekend as well. It's going to be excellent. Orcs, I'd be interested to play for the same reason. Lots of transports to wrap if you can get absolutely saucy with it if you can get in there. But it's not the easiest thing in the world
No,
to beat. It'd be an interesting matchup for sure.
because they have the output to kill you, but also bizarrely you have the output to murder them very quickly.
So, John, is there anything you'd change in this for? I mean, the majority of people I think watching probably aren't playing teams a lot, or maybe you are. High five. But a lot of people play singles a lot more. What would you change in this list to go singles?
I mean, so if I was to play teams again, I'd probably drop one lictor for for the extra 10 to have 4x20. Like the 10 just felt like a bit of a dogleg unit, or
Yeah.
try and find points to turn it into another unit 10 Hormigons. So in singles, like for me, I would immediately drop the Hive Guard. And I would just use those 200 points to put in more chaff. I would up it to the Termagants to 20, so it's 4x20. I'd probably take another unit of 10 Hormagaunts.
Really?
Yeah, so there was a couple of matchups like the Eldari one was probably a good example. Because without the Hive Guard, like my opponent could just sit 5 rangers within 6 inches of the center objective and deny a big denial, area denial. But also just having an extra unit of 10 Hormagaunts to just throw at your opponent isn't going to hurt. They move much faster than Termagants. It's easier to deny primary. It gives you the out to just applying enough pressure to just go, right, I'm going to deny you. Because all you need to do is deny a couple of turns of primary and this army's ahead. And you don't win. I had some very big wins, but that was out of probably more luck than the army generally probably wins 12, 13 points generally. So like playing the extra Hormagaunts gives you those 5 points, gives you those 10 points. They also pick up other chaff units, which is really good.
Brilliant.
And then potentially, so you've then got another sort of 80 points. Then there's the sort of the temptations you put in Raveners, If you drop a lictor down to 2 lictor to 1 Neuralictor, 1 lictor, I think having 3 lone ops is really good, and I really enjoyed that. So I'd probably be looking at like keeping 2 lictors, 1 Neuralictor, and then just dropping the Hive Guard for Hormagaunts, more Termagants, maybe some Raveners, or just more. You could in theory run 3x10 Hormagaunts as well. I know Sam's taken the Winged Hive Tyrant again, but I just think it's more on UKTC. It's just really hard to hide properly and to get the most off of.
It's okay on 3 of the 5 missions, and on 2 it's a nightmare.
Yeah, and there were a couple of matchups like Death Guard. Bizarrely, Death Guard's a really good example of this. If I'd have had 2 more units of Hormagaunts just to throw at my opponent's objectives, it probably is a big win. It makes it a bigger win because you just yeet 10 Hormagaunts across the board and go, cool, it's my objective. I've committed no real resources, but I've denied 10 points.
Craig's raised a really good point there as well. Hey, Craig, by the way, you should be on the show, mate. You're contributing just as much as we are. He suggested, you need another 10 Hormagaunts in a melee matchup for move blocking. And I definitely do agree with that. I think I found myself having to move block with 20 Termagants. As John says, it's hard because they are your competitive edge, right? They are how you win the game because they're going to be on objectives. As soon as you lose 1 unit, then 2 units, and then all of a sudden it's a much fairer fight.
So I think, like, just thinking about it now, so I think what I do is I drop the Hive Guard, I downgrade the Neuralictor to a Lictor, which gives you 230 points. I then add in probably 20 Hormagaunts, 10 more Termagants, which is 130, 190. You've still got 40 points. You can potentially either chuck in a Pyrovore if you just want a model. There's probably things you can do with the points. It's just kind of one of those things that it's like, I just think randomly having more chaff, especially on UKTC, because I didn't really feel like there would be turns where I just dump CP, but I never really felt like I was struggling for it and needed the Hive Tyrant buff. I do wonder if it's kind of like just getting more stuff, like, because then your 4x20 Termagant units aren't needing to, like you say, do move blocking. They're not needed to deny primary. You can use them for what they're there for, which is just be stupidly annoying. And also, like, 10 Hormagaunts kills 10 cultists easily.
Yeah, pretty good. Yeah, it's true.
It's kind of one of those. Well, you kill enough to out-OP them on the other.
Definitely. All right, nice. So, of course, before the end of the show, guys, if you have any questions that you'd like to ask JP, put them in the chat. We've got a couple more slides just to run into before we call it a night tonight. Of course, JP, actually, I think you got top Tyranny player of the event. So you were the last name on the list on BCP. So I guess you were.
Maybe.
No, well, apparently, according to that, you were. Okay. So take it.
No, will do.
Jason Linker, I wonder if Imperial Guard could actually make this kind of list. Yeah, potentially. I mean, it's very guardy, I suppose you could argue. But we also have Greg Chamberlain, who came second. And Greg's list, again, is Invasion Fleet. I do think that is the way you have to go at the moment, man. Like, you have to go that way at the moment with if you want to compete. I think Invasion Fleet is just awesome, and it hurts my soul as the anti-white bread guy to say that. But Greg's list is slightly different. He's got a Broodlord, he's got a Hive Tyrant. I say it's slightly different, it's very different. Heavy Venom Cannon on the Hive Tyrant. We've got 10 Hormagaunts, 20 Hormagaunts, Biovore, 3 Exocrines, 10 Gene Sealers, 2 Lictors, a Maliceptor, Pyrovore, Trigon, Acid Fex, Rupture Fex. Lots of one-offs, which is quite interesting. Great to see Greg holding on to that Rupture Fex after his interview on the show last week, where he was like, no, hate Rupture Fexes, I never hit with them. But still in there. But he did put in the 10 Gene Stealers he was talking about, so that's great to see. And he also did very well, absolutely bodying people at the event. He went into Tau, Orcs, T-Suns, Admech. Admech, by the way, Johnny Simmons, so a real tough matchup, and he got a 19-1 there. But no, great weekend for Greg. So if you are looking at Invasion Fleet and you don't have 90 Termagants or 80 Termagants and Hormagant mix-ups, you can absolutely go and play with this list by Greg, which is absolutely fantastic. And then, guys, I know you don't want to hear about Invasion Fleet all the time, so I have brought you the spiciest list that did okay. It did well, actually, over the last 2 weeks. And it's a Crusher Stampede list by Stephen Fort. I'm going to say it's 4 or 4. It's not 4A, that, right? It's 4.
Go with 4.
4. Yeah, we'll go with 4. He got a 4-1, the number 1 Tyranid player at the Battles Brother GT with Crusher Stampede, right? So here's the list. Tell me if when you think about what's the spicy bit in this list. Old One Eye, Swarm Lord, 2 Exocrines, 3 Harrispexes. You think that's spicy? Hold My Beer, 3 Maliceptors, 3 times 10 Neuro... Oh, it'll be 3 times 11. I've wrote that in wrong. 3 times 11 Neurogons, 2 times 3 Raveners, and a Trigon. As someone who's experimented with Crusher Stampede, JP, how do you feel about this?
I like it. Like the Harrispexes are bizarrely quite good in Crusher, walking through walls, full rerolls to hit, impact hits, all the good stuff. It's a really good list. I would. It feels like it's missing the rupture fexes too much.
Man, that's right.
Again, like if you look at what he played against, then I just think that like the middle one versus Vanguard Onslaught doesn't surprise me. That is like just impossible for Vanguard Onslaught to win. It's just
the mirror, right? They never win the mirror. Vanguard Onslaught never win the mirror.
You just body the smaller models. Classic T-Suns is just a bit bad right now. They just don't have enough stuff. You just have more monsters. Imperial Knights is a really good result, but again, like we found, the Imperial Knights do actually kind of struggle to kill monsters at the moment just because of lack of AP. And then
interesting. I think that one comes down to the board as well.
Yeah.
Imagine if your corner deployment. I imagine this was GW terrain, right?
Yeah.
If you can get across the board stage once and give them 1 shot to kill you or something like that, because this feels like a full yeet list, right? Like you pushing everything up the board. If you can stop them shooting you for a turn, then you get into them with those Harrispexes into even a big knight is probably shitting itself.
Yep.
He did lose one. It was round 1. Thank you for pointing that out, David Ricketts. The game he lost was against Hallowed Martyrs, 62-92. Apologies.
Sisters is hard. They kill monsters. They are able to kill monsters really efficiently.
Absolutely. But no, a very spicy list. If you are into your Crusher Stampede, definitely one. Again, if you're on GW terrain, do not try this on UKTC. You will have a bad time. All right, cool, and that's it. So we have some chat. Chat went crazy for the last like 20 minutes. So we have Gel Maris, a lovely teammate of ours on the show, here to watch some bugs. Yeah, very good to see you here, Jack. Then we have Bread. So Bread, I was going to say we haven't seen your name in chat there. He's always on. Bugwatch, let's go, yeah. Then we also have Phil. Well, we spoke about this, Phil, real briefly. Congratulations on the weekend, but why no DAC effects? And again, well, I'll let JP give his take, but you've already heard my take.
I mean, it's pretty much the same. You're playing a super passive army, and it's minimizing your opponent's efficiency into your army. You're offering them gaunts. You don't want to offer them something that suddenly makes their las cannons viable. You basically want to play a game where it's like you can shoot your las cannon into a gaunt. Good luck. That's kind of the way you want to play them, the army.
Absolutely. I do like the DAC effects, but I think you have to build around them, build an entire list, which is super aggressive, and this list isn't that, is it? And we also have, do you think Nids, in general, is a better attacker or defender? As someone who does not play teams, I have no opinion. But, JP, what do you reckon?
So they're a really good. I think they're a much better defender. It depends on if you need to protect any. If you need to protect armies, then they can do either. They're a really good army at doing both. Generically don't get big scores like myself and Greg.
Sorry, your mic's gone.
So I think myself and Greg are probably the exception to the rule. If you look at how all the other Tyranid players did all weekend, slightly less good. Obviously, Greg bodied people. I did a decent amount of bodying people. But generally, I can look at most matchups now and go, I can definitely get a 10 out of this. I can, in sort of WTC scoring, or a small loss like an 8 or an 8 to a 10. There's very bad matchups for Tyranids right now. So you can just kind of go into anything, and it just depends on your build as to how much you can extend a differential if you need to.
Absolutely. And then a great question from Craig Bedford, also the collaborator on the show today. I have a question, actually. How do you manage your opponent potentially getting cull with it being uncapped and you push at the wrong time? You can just lose, right? You can. And I found this out. Go and watch my Coventry GT review where my opponent scored 10 points on that secondary alone. It is pretty rough. But JP, what do you reckon?
So on UKTC, there's very rare occurrences where you have to expose two 20-man units at the same time.
Yeah, that's it.
You basically the way I was playing it was basically if my opponent had already drawn Cull, then I'd be much more aggressive. But if my opponent hasn't drawn Cull, it's like, okay, I'll give you I'll expose 20-man, see if you can kill it. But then I'll cover myself by revealing one model of another unit and do the same in and out strategy with it. So it's kind of like at no point this weekend was I worried about Cull blowing me out because the army doesn't really have to commit. And I think if you took the Hive Guard out in singles and just played more stuff like more Hormagaunts, you are even less likely to be affected by Cull the Horde, which is kind of really nice. Not one of my opponents was able to ever get Cull the Horde.
I think those melee matchups I mentioned, Full World Eaters, Yeet, or the Space Wolves list that I spoke about in the Coventry report, they're the ones that get Cull. They're the ones that, if they can jump into you and then activate like a million Shade Sword attacks or chain axes or whatever, if they can, that's how they can do it. Your opponent, I think, if you imagine you're standing across the table from JP the weekend and he's got two Termagants sitting out there, like if your army cannot kill that 20, you probably recycle that card.
Yeah.
You just go, I can't do it. I want to do it. I know that it's good, but I just cannot score it. However, if you have an army of staged Khorne Berserkers or assault intercessors with chainswords and jump packs, then you start to go, okay, how do I make this work? So I think that's how that goes. All right. Hide that one. Cool. And then that's it. That's all the questions, guys. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening. And thank you, JP, for taking us through the tournament. Any final thoughts, JP, before we leave?
I thoroughly recommend this army. I've got a couple of I think I've got a couple of scrims coming up before the end of the year. I will 100% be putting this back on that table to try and work out, play around with the numbers, potentially just drop the Hive turret and play more stuff. But no, I'll definitely be playing this army, trying to work out how much it's going to cost me to put it on the table without borrowing it from three people.
I've got bad news for you, JP. Painting 90 Termagants is a pain in the ass.
I know. Shannon's already told me that she's not looking forward to it if that's the route I decide to go. But
yeah, for those who don't know, JP's wife paints. Oh, by the way, everyone, can we get some congratulations in the chat for the boy that got married? JP got married 2 weeks ago. We said on the show, but yeah, get some love in chat. But yeah, I remember having to paint 140 Termagants for an unending swarm list, and that was rough.
Yeah, so not massively looking forward to it, but I might start working towards it. I've still got all the monsters if I need to, and Vanguard Onslaught in the background, but it's honestly a fantastic army list. Yeah, it's really, really good.
Yeah, man, it's really good fun. And again, guys, I think a lot of people get like a bit of the heebie-jeebies about using that many models, and the amount of people that come over to me, firstly, or they'll come over and go, "Oh, how you doing?" all that. All like thinking that my back is sore. Or they come over, your opponent comes over with a clock. You're like, yeah, sure, put me on a clock. Yeah, it's like that meme. Someone called an ambulance. It's not for me, it's for you. Because you're going to be standing there with your head in your hands figuring, how the hell do I get through this army? It's so true.
I mean, that was the thing in the first round versus Brian. Brian would have clocked out before me just because there is so much, your opponent really has to think about how they play the matchup. If your opponent just plays quick, sort of fast and loose, they're just going to get massacred by this list because it will just deny everything to them. But it's bizarre. People are like, "Oh, do you need a clock?" I'm like, "No, I'll be fine. You crack on. If you need one, you put one on."
Absolutely. It does. What was the other thing I was going to say about that? Yeah, because I think what it does is it rewards someone who plays perfectly and has clear thinking and understands it. Mm-hmm. But I've played games with this list where if someone makes a mistake, it's that's it. One mistake in turn 3, okay, game's over. Because now, for example, if you're a teleporty army like Hypercrypto Grey Knights, the second I then get across the table, if you decide to play that aggressive style against the army, which it does reward you, then all of a sudden they can't go where they want to go, and that's their thing, right?
Just one other thing. Obviously, it's when you actually think about your turns, you're moving some monsters around and moving 15 gaunts. And that's it. Your first couple of turns are I'm just going to move a few gaunts out. I might move them back. I might put some back on. you actually don't do a lot. Bizarrely, you don't actually move that many models in the first few turns because you've set your castle and it's like, right, this unit's going to peek out here.
Yeah. No, you bang on. You bang on. And then all of a sudden your opponent's like, why aren't you charging at me? Why aren't you carpeting the board? Like, well,
Not how I'm playing.
that's not how I'm playing today.
I'm not playing Unending Swarm.
Absolutely. Well, guys, we'll call it a night there. Thank you very much. I'm sure John actually just wants to go to bed after 3 days of talking about Warhammer, maybe 3 days plus the 2 weeks in prep. But yes, absolutely great. And we'll catch you all later. Have a great one, and we'll hopefully maybe speak to you next week with a GT report of my own. Catch you later.
See ya.